Well, not exactly. Before we left, I realized there was one last thing I had to do.
What is up, Star Trek fan? Are you ready to explore some hidden details about one of the most dynamic characters in the Star Trek universe? This week, we are diving into Star Trek: 10 things you didn't know about Captain Benjamin Sisko. Buckle up, because there is a lot you might not know about this legendary Starfleet officer. Number 1. Sisko's role as a father came first. Benjamin Sisko's role as a father often gets overshadowed by his impressive command of Deep Space Nine. But it was his relationship with his son Jake that defined much of his character. From the start, Sisko was not just a captain. He was a single father raising his son on a space station surrounded by the political and military turmoil of the Dominion War. The fact that he balanced his high-stakes career with his responsibility to take Jake is one of the things that makes Sisko stand out as a leader. In a universe where many Star Trek captains are often portrayed as distant or overly focused on their missions, Sisko showed a deep commitment to his family. This is particularly evident in his interactions with Jake, where he constantly supports him emotionally while also providing tough love when needed. It's rare in Star Trek for a father-son relationship to be portrayed so authentically, and it's one of the aspects of Sisko's character that made him relatable to audiences. What sets Sisko apart is that his fatherhood wasn't a side plot. It was central to his character development. We see him struggle with the balancing act of being a captain and a father, and it humanizes him in a way that other Star Trek captains didn't necessarily get. Number 2, the prophecy and his connection to Bajoran wormhole. Captain Sisko's role as the emissary of the Bajoran people is one of the most fascinating aspects of his character, but it is also one that is often misunderstood. The prophecy, which foretold the coming of the emissary to the Bajorans, placed Sisko at the center of a religious conflict that tied him to the mysterious beings of the Bajoran wormhole. It's easy to think of Sisko as just a military leader, but his connection to the prophecy added a deeply spiritual dimension to his character. The Bajoran saw him as a chosen one, and this responsibility forced Sisko to walk a fine line between his duties as a Starfleet officer and his role in Bajoran culture. While Sisko often struggled with the weight of this title, especially because of his own skepticism toward religious matters, it became a driving force throughout Deep Space Nine. Number 3, a captain who is not afraid to get his hands dirty. Benjamin Sisko wasn't just a captain in name. He was often at the front lines of the action. Unlike many of his Starfleet counterparts, Sisko did not hesitate to get his hands dirty, whether it meant stepping into a combat situation himself or making tough, morally complex decisions. In fact, Deep Space Nine is known for the grittier tone compared to other Star Trek series, and Sisko's leadership style was a big part of that shift. He understood that sometimes diplomacy and Starfleet protocols weren't enough, especially when dealing with powerful enemies like the Dominion. Sisko didn't shy away from direct confrontation, and on more than one occasion, he put himself in harm's way to protect the people at DS9 or to complete his mission. Number 4, his relationship with the Bajoran people was far from simple. While Sisko is often remembered as a hero to the Bajorans, his relationship with them wasn't always smooth. From the very beginning of Deep Space Nine, Sisko's presence on Bajor was a source of tension. The Bajorans were recovering from decades of brutal occupation by the Cardassians, and many of them viewed Sisko's arrival with suspicion, especially when it came to his role as the emissary. Sisko himself was caught between Starfleet's orders to maintain a neutral stance and his deep personal connection to the Bajoran struggle. While he worked tirelessly to defend Bajor, Sisko had to navigate the culture and religious complexities of their society, and it was often a rocky road. The most telling aspect of Sisko's relationship with the Bajorans is his dynamic with Major Kira Nerys. While Kira, a former resistance fighter, initially viewed Sisko as another Starfleet outsider, over time she came to see him as a close ally and trusted friend. Their relationship was built on mutual respect, though it took time to develop due to the unique challenges they faced. Number 5, his complex views on the Prime Directive. The Prime Directive is one of the core tenets of Starfleet, but Benjamin Sisko often found himself questioning it. In Deep Space Nine, the Prime Directive, which prohibits Starfleet officers from interfering in the natural development of alien cultures, became a point of contention for Sisko. Unlike other captains, SISKO didn't always agree that the directive should be followed to the letter, especially when it came to the well-being of the Bajorans or dealing with larger threats like the Dominion. SISKO's approach to the Prime Directive evolved throughout the series. Early on, he was willing to bend the rules for the greater good, often making decisions based on moral imperatives rather than strict adherence to Starfleet regulations. This willingness to challenge the Prime Directive became one of the defining aspects of his leadership style. Number 6, his leadership was tested by the Dominion War. No conversation about Captain SISKO would be complete without mentioning the Dominion War, one of the most defining events in Star Trek history. As the commander of Deep Space Nine, SISKO found himself on the front lines of a brutal and ongoing conflict that tested both his strategic genius and his emotional resilience. Unlike the relatively peaceful missions of some other Star Trek captains, SISKO's time in charge of DS9 was marked by constant war. The Dominion, a powerful and ruthless empire, was a force unlike any the Federation had faced before. The war threw SISKO into difficult positions, forcing him to make a controversial decision in order to protect his crew, the Federation, and the Alpha Quadrant as a whole. Number 7, his unconventional relationship with Dax. SISKO's relationship with the Trill symbiote, Jadzia Dax, was unlike any other mentor-mentee dynamic in Star Trek. Dax, the host of a centuries-old symbiont, was both a wise and young figure, and her relationship with SISKO evolved from a respectful but professional one into a deep friendship. Two characters shared an understanding of each other that went beyond traditional Starfleet officer bonds. What made this new relationship so unique was that SISKO never saw Dax as just a host or a new person. He saw her as someone with her own identity and experiences. This made their friendship richer and more nuanced than other professional relationships in Star Trek. Despite Dax's past lives and the complexity of the Trill symbiosis, SISKO treated her as an equal, which reinforced his capacity for understanding and connection. Number 8, SISKO's philosophical approach to command. SISKO's approach to leadership wasn't just about making tactical decisions or issuing orders. He had a philosophical view on what it meant to be in command. From his reflections on the nature of war to his thoughts on the responsibility of leadership, SISKO often displayed a deep philosophical side. He questioned what it meant to be a leader in times of crisis, and his moral dilemmas gave fans a look at what it's like to be a leader when the stakes are incredibly high. What set SISKO apart from other leaders was his acknowledgement that sometimes leadership required sacrifices. SISKO was not immune to doubt or the ethical challenges that came with command. His introspective moment showed the cost of leadership in a war-torn universe, where decisions were rarely black and white. One of the more poignant aspects of his philosophy was his ability to recognize his own limitations, while never allowing them to compromise his duty. His ability to adapt, learn from his mistakes, and hold himself accountable made him one of the most morally complex captains in Star Trek. Number 9, the legacy of his leadership beyond DS9. SISKO's impact wasn't confined to the events of Deep Space Nine. In fact, his leadership influenced not only the future of Starfleet, but also the fate of the Federation and the Alpha Quadrant. After his time at DS9, the relationships he forged with Bajor, the Federation, and even the Cardassians left a lasting legacy on galactic politics. SISKO's role in securing peace during the Dominion War, while fraught with challenges, had ripple effects long after the war ended. SISKO's influence on his crew, particularly on characters like Kira, Jadzia, and even Garak, showed that his leadership style was more than just orders and strategies. He taught those around him to look beyond the present conflict and consider the long-term consequences of their actions. His guidance helped prepare his crew not just for military victories, but for the philosophical challenges that they'd face in the future. His leadership also extended into the realm of personal growth. Take his mentorship of Jake, for example. By the end of Deep Space Nine, Jake had matured into a respected writer, and SISKO's guidance as his father and leader had played a role in that transformation. Even in his absence, his influence continued to shape the lives of those who had been closest to him. Number 10, his return to the prophets. SISKO's role as a prophet. Perhaps one of the most enigmatic aspects of Captain SISKO's journey is his transformation into a prophet of the Bajoran religion. In the series finale, What You Leave Behind, SISKO enters the Bajoran wormhole to fulfill his destiny, where he merges with the prophet's non-linear beings with an almost godlike power. His ascension to this new role represented the culmination of his long journey of self-discovery, leadership, and faith. Many fans were left with questions about SISKO's fate, especially given that his return to the prophets meant that he would no longer be a part of the physical world. But SISKO's role as a prophet didn't erase his humanity, it added to it. The prophets may have transcended time and space, but SISKO retained his emotional and moral compass. In many ways, his final transformation was the ultimate expression of the themes of fate, duty, and belief that had run throughout Deep Space Nine. And there you have it. Star Trek 10 Things You Didn't Know About Captain Benjamin Sisko. From his unique role as a father to his philosophical approach to command, Sisko's journey was one of complexity, growth, and profound impact. His leadership not only shaped Deep Space Nine, but also left a lasting legacy across the entire Star Trek universe. And if you learned something new about this iconic captain, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more Star Trek deep dives. Until next time, live long and prosper.